Morning, everyone. My apologies if are you able to hear me today? Okay, I'm seeing hands up. I'm not able to hear anything else right now. So if someone just wants to speak for a moment.
Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3.
It's almost like modern technology is here to help us. So thanks so much, Doug. I appreciate that. I'm just going to wait a moment or two to see if anyone else. I haven't heard anything from the last person who's not here yet. So maybe just wait 10 seconds and then get going with the agenda.
Hello, Chair. All board members are in attendance here at the forum.
Okay, thanks. So let's just get started then with the agenda. So the first item is just the adoption of the agenda itself. I'm assuming that could be just approved with consent. So then moving on to the adoption of the minutes, were there any errors or omissions in the minutes that anyone identified? Mr. Director Rogers, is there something you noticed with minutes?
Microphone, Bob.
Yep. Scott, are you looking for a motion for the minutes?
Oh, no, I was just wondering if there are any errors, and then we could just get a motion for the minutes after that. But seeing as there's no errors, let's just get a motion for the minutes, and I believe Director Rogers has made that motion.
Seconded.
Seconded by Mayor O'Brien. All in favor? Okay, moving on.
Yeah, we couldn't
Sorry
hear you, Scott.
I'm trying to manage multiple tabs on my laptop. Director Holmes, Mr. Holmes is up with a report on the financial plan as the next item of business on the agenda. My apologies. And my apologies, Ms. Holmes. Didn't know the J. Holmes I was guessing. My apologies.
Good morning. No worries about it at all. Okay, good morning. We're looking at this morning the financial plan draft for the 2024 to 2028 year for the AWS water service. And we've got the PowerPoint here ahead of us. There we go. So just to understand what we're going to go through today, just a little bit on process for the financial plan, going through some of the changes from what you adopted last year in your 2023 to 2027 plan, go through some of the details of the actual financial plan, and then recommendations, which are also in your agenda. According to our joint venture agreement for AWS, which was finalized in June of 2022, the management committee, which is comprised of staff from Parksville, Qualicum Beach, and the regional district, meet to review operations and a preliminary 5-year financial plan. And of course, that's taken in the context of operational reports that you've been receiving throughout the year. The next step is where we're at today, where the management board reviews and hopefully approves the financial plan as it's presented. And then the last stage is for each of the joint ventures to take that back to their respective local government councillor board to adopt their portion of the financial plan that is allocated to them. And that is in accordance with community charter requirements. So that's our process kind of starting today. Will be the first meeting, second at your local board or council. Looking at specifically changes from last year's financial plan. So just so that you can understand the incremental amounts that are in the 2024 to 2028 financial plan. What I'll point out to you is all of these, with the exception of one, are things that the board has previously approved, and now we're just incorporating them into the financial plan. And so you'll note 2 stars on the slide there showing that these are expenditures that were approved for 2023, but are continuing into 2024. So we go through a process of rebudgeting those in the year. What that means, though, is that your requisition for 2023 would actually be lower than what was presented in the financial plan because we didn't complete all of that spending. And so just want to confirm that your requisition that is reflected in the financial statements of each organization is only based on actuals. And so what we have in there is a continuation of a security upgrade that we've been doing at the dam. And about $5,000 was spent this year, and there's about $28,000 moving into 2024. There's some work that needed to be evaluated over the winter season, and last year we didn't get it in there early enough. So we would expect to finish that off in the spring. The other item there is $30,000 remaining on the works related to the provisional operating rule. We're forecasting that 70% of that project would be done by year end. So just rebudgeting the remainder for completion in early 2024 and bringing the results of that back to the board. The other item that is new in here, though, is the inundation study that has been proposed by our utilities manager. However, that's contingent upon receiving 100% grant funding for that. So it's net zero effect on the financial plan, because you'll note in a later slide that we've got $45,000 of grant funding in there and then $45,000 of the cost. And so that will only proceed if we're successful in getting a grant for that, but it does need to be in the financial plan for our application. And then just on the top, some smaller operating changes, some tweaks to our staffing related to this. We've had a lot of big projects, both in the AWS and the ERWS, and need a little bit more senior time with our manager. So there's increasing her time to be 20% allocated to the AWS rather than last year was 10%. And then there's also some finance time that is allocated just with respect to my support of the AWS, as well as our finance staff here at the City of Parksville that process all the financial pieces for the AWS. And finally, on the maintenance side of things, there was an increase in our contract for our annual dam inspections. So increasing from about $4,500 to about $7,500. So that's the other kind of just small change, incremental from last year. I'll just pause a moment if there's any questions on any of that before I proceed. So looking at our summarized expenditures, these are the total amounts for our 2024 to 2028 financial plan. You'll see that there's a forecast column for 2023 where we're expecting to land by the end of the year, as well as the original 2023 financial plan, and then 5 years as required going out from 24 to 2028. Just some comments on that. You'll notice that the operations number in the 2023 forecast is higher than what the financial plan was. And that's that provisional operating rule works that you approved previously. So there is about $70,000 in there. But what you'll see is that the total expenditures for the year forecasted is still less than the financial plan amount. So some of the things that came in under budget that allow that still to come in under the total expenditures is some of the maintenance work that was thought to be required at the dam over the winter. The province pulled back on some of that while some of these studies were happening. So we had allowed for a helicopter oversight, some snowmobile rental, some weekly inspections by staff, and those things got pulled back to be once a month for staff. The snowmobile wasn't required, the helicopter wasn't required. So there was some costs that just didn't get incurred that were included in our 2023 financial plans. So that offset the increase from the provisional operating rule work. I think that's all I have to tell you on the expenditures side. You'll note that the continuation of the transfer to reserves is at $42,000 consistent with last year. That is $30,000 that goes towards capital replacement, and $12,000, if you recall, 2 years ago, the board approved putting aside $12,000 per year for 10 years to fund the dam safety review every 10 years. So that's just an operational review that'll have the money in hand when we get to that, and it won't be such a big jump in the numbers for the AWS. The other thing I'll point out to you on this, the road maintenance, you'll see in the forecast is 0. We continue to work with Mosaic on some kind of operating agreements related to the use of the road to the dam. And so that's been progressing. There's been no issues with access to the road. I've dropped the budget going forward just because we keep budgeting and it keeps being 0. I think this is the 3rd year in a row that it's been near 0. So once we've got that in hand and understand if there will be any cost sharing related to the road, we can bring that back to you. On the capital side, we have that 28,000 remaining on the security upgrade, as well as there's some power supply upgrades that have been scheduled for a number of years at the dam in 2024 and 2026, 10,000 and 30,000 respectively. So that's the additional amount on the capital side, giving us total estimated expenditures for 2024 at 379,000, about 40,000 higher than last year. So moving ahead to the share of these costs and the joint venture contributions, you'll see that we've got that $45,000 grant amount, which is proportionately reduces the share to each of the joint ventures, and about a total of 133,000 increase in total requisition over last year. And the forecasted for 2023 is about 15,000 lower than what was predicted in the 2023 financial plan. And we've gone through the changes that impact that, but just to note the sharing formula where the Town of Qualicum Beach does not share in the operational costs, only City of Parksville and RDN do, and that those operational costs are based on flows. We're looking at an average of the last 2 years of about 71%. So that's what I've used in the financial plan. When we go to do the year-end financial statements, it'll be based on the actual proportionate shares of each of the City of Parksville and the regional district for determination of final requisitions. Okay, if there aren't any questions, the recommendations are per your agenda on page 1, and they're also on the screen there.
Thank you very much, Ms. Holmes. Are there any questions from any members of the board?
No, I'm good. I don't have any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. So seeing none, I guess we should just take the 3 recommendations individually. So first on number 1, if someone could move the motion. Director Rogers, I see your hand in the air. And seconded by Mayor O'Brien. All in favor? Myself as well. So moving on then to the second recommendation that the AWS Water Service Management Board approve the 2024 to 2020 financial plan is outlined in table 1. Someone to make a motion. Mayor O'Brien. I think I saw Councillor Grenz's hand up for a second there. All those in favor? And then the third motion is just that the AWS Water Service Management Board recommend the joint ventures approve the respective portions of the 2024 to 2028 financial plan as outlined in table 2, table 3, and table 4 attached to the report. Just a motion to that effect from Councillor Grenz and seconded by Director Rogers. All those in favor? Very quickly. Thank you very much, gentlemen. And that then brings us to adjournment. With motion from Mayor O'Brien and all those in favor of adjourning. And we are adjourned, gentlemen. Thank you very much for your time. My apologies. There's something going on in our end. I'm a little bit distracted with that. So I appreciate your indulgence. Thanks so much. Take care.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the November 9th meeting of the Englishman River Water Services Board. So the board would like to recognize the people of the Coast Salish Nations and their traditional territory upon which we gather with gratitude. Having called the meeting to order, on the agenda, we have the first item of business is approval of the agenda. Is there a mover to move? Moved by Mayor O'Brien, seconded by Councillor Grenz. So all those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Number 3, adoption of the minutes. The minutes of the Englishman River Water Service Management Board meeting held September 27th, 2023. That's on pages 3 to 4 of your agenda. Is there a recommendation from a member for that? Moved by Mayor O'Brien, seconded by Councillor Grenz. All those in favor? So moving forward on to reports. We just have the one report, and Ms. Holmes, City of Parksville, Director of Finance. Jetta, thank you.
Good morning again. So now we'll go through the 2024 to 2028 financial plan for the Englishman River Water Service Joint Venture. And my report starts on page 5 of your agenda. The financial plan incorporates items that the board has already approved and incorporates discussions from our September meeting in which our manager of utilities gave you an overview of activities and such at the ERWS. Thanks, Amanda. Just to review our process, per our joint venture agreement finalized in June of 2022, the management committee, which incorporates staff from the City of Parksville and the regional district, meet to review operations as well as preliminary 5-year financial plan. The next step is to bring it to you today to the management board to review the financial plan and hopefully approve that as well. And then the next step is to take it back to your respective council and board for adoption of your share of the joint venture financial plan. And that allows us to meet the community charter requirements. This slide reviews and summarizes items that have changed from the last financial plan that you adopted, which was the 2023 to 2027, and also incorporates any items that were approved midway through the year and allocating those to 2024 and beyond. So just to note a couple of things in here, the items with stars beside them are items that were included in last year's financial plan and are continuing through to 2024. So they've been rebudgeted in 2024. And the items with a tick are items that were approved previously by the board, either at last year's financial plan or during the year, that actually haven't started. And so they're fully budgeted in 2024 to continue on. And so I'll just walk through those briefly. The first is the $86,000, which was a plant design audit, and the board had previously approved that work for Stantec to do in reviewing the plant design. And so that work will be starting early in the new year. The environmental monitoring of $33,000 is that 5-year program of the fish monitoring in the river. And so we just needed to carry on the portion that is related to the reporting in 2023. So that's that $33,000 amount, but again, is part of the total that was approved by the board last year. The other new amount with respect to items that were previously in last year's financial plan is the continuation of the technical support that we have with respect to a lot of work with respect to SCADA, but also just the operations of the water treatment plant, both from Stantec and another engineer. And so that $100,000 is a continuation of that work in 2024. A small adjustment to administration wages with respect to the work plan at the ERWS. We needed some more higher level time. And so the allocation of time of our utilities manager has increased at the ERWS. And so that's a reflection of that time of wages and benefits allocation. The other thing that we noted in 2023 was that our allocation last year took into account a total staff allocation. We did our best to estimate what would be the split between operations and maintenance. We were off on that. And so you'll see there's an adjustment between operations wages and benefits and maintenance wages and benefits, where we needed to increase the maintenance and drop the operations to have a better allocation of actual activities. And so those amounts washed to zero in terms of the total changes, but it's just really showing it a reduction in operations and an increase in maintenance wages. And that's really because the staff at the ERWS is doing a lot of work in preventative maintenance plans and maintenance of the plant. And so we want to capture that as best we can in estimating that. We also see a reduction in the cost of geobags replacement in the maintenance budget as compared to last year. We had estimated high on what we expected the cost to be, and it's about $10,000 lower based on our actual purchases this year. And so that $10,000 is an adjustment to show that reduction. I think last year at the height of a lot of very high inflationary changes, we were trying to be conservative in our budgeting. And so what we're seeing this year is we'll have some downward adjustments just to reflect that some of those costs didn't go as high as we expected.
Mayor O'Brien.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question through to Jetta. On the geobag replacements, are we looking for this to be an annual replacement? Is that what we're looking at for replacement of the geobags? We were unsure at the time when they were going, how long they were going to last. I know we had a backup as well, but does it appear to be like a once yearly replacement?
Right, through the chair. That's what we're budgeting for right now. I think
Right.
we're still learning. That system's just been completed during 2023. So right now we're budgeting for one a year, and we'll probably do that at least for the next couple of years until we see if it is a longer lasting item. But for now, it is still one a year.
Great, that fair,
Yeah.
fair enough. Thank you.
Okay, the other item you'll see there on the change is the $125,000 related to the water resiliency and storage options review that was budgeted at that same amount in 2023. That's happening in 2024 in concert with the drinking water master plan that the city of Parksville is doing, because there's some efficiencies that we can gain there, as well as the other pieces that are ERWS only. So that's why that's moved out to 2024. It didn't get started in 2023. Any questions on those changes before I move ahead?
You good, Joel?
Thank you, Chair. Maybe a question through you to Jetta is, there are a number of items that have been deferred through from 2023 to 2024. I understand the one around the drinking water study. And hopefully there's opportunity to see some cost savings with the other budget there. Are we seeing an increased city staff costs? Is this, are we good for capacity? Is that the challenge, or are there reasons for things being kind of pushed into 2024?
Through the chair, I think there were some things that came up during the year in 2023 that diverted staff time towards other activities. I don't think we're seeing a capacity issue at this point. We are tweaking the staff a little bit, but just really the increase on the manager time to have that higher level review on some of the work plan items. So I would say at this point, I don't think it's a capacity item, but I think the ERWS staff team will keep in touch with you on that if that becomes an issue moving forward. It's always hard to know when kind of things, a lot of project things come in or unexpected items as to how the regular operations look. But in terms of our kind of operators' time, that seems to be relatively good at this point. We had a little bit more overtime than expected in 2023, but for the most part, I think we're getting to understand what the normal is.
And then maybe a follow-up, if I may. Maybe putting on my City of Parksville hat here, are we going to see a sort of capacity challenge on the City of Parksville side, and also potential, I guess, when the financial plan for the City of Parksville comes on, correspondingly lower cost to the City of Parksville if staff is being allocated towards ERWS and AWS?
Yeah, through the chair. So yes, on the manager time, we would see the reduction on the City of Parksville utilities split, because the allocation to the city would be lower as a result of it being higher here. On the rest of the kind of operator staff, we'd kind of moved to those positions last year. So that was already in place in the City of Parksville plan last year. So we wouldn't see a reduction or a change in that so much this year.
And then in terms of capacity, there's like we've got enough of a capacity to be able to kind of be fluid between City of Parksville only initiatives and.
Right, through the chair. So last year, we had significant adjustments in the ERWS staffing because what we had done the prior couple of years was had a lot of fluidity between the city of Parksville and ERWS staff in terms of a lot of sharing of staff. What we moved to last year was having very dedicated staff that were ERWS only. And we use the city of Parksville staff as backup for vacation or sickness or things like that as needed. But we have really dedicated staff. So there isn't as much change back and forth between the city and ERWS as there was, say, 2 and 3 years ago. Yeah.
Mayor O'Brien.
Thank you, Chair, and through to Jetta once again. So in between the major change from the operations wages and benefits and moving over to maintenance as well. So it seems like the allocation is going to be greater now to the maintenance and the repair work instead of in the operations. So that's where the bulk of the costs are going to be maintained. I see and projecting all the way out to 2028. So it seems to be a better utilization of that amount anyways for the repair and maintenance of the staff anyways that they're doing it at the plant. So that was something that was recognizing that ongoing that is certain maintenance items that have to be done all the time. So, but obviously the operations is less than that amount. So as to say, it's just basically a trade-off at that time. So it seems to be like, I was wondering how come we allocated so much on the operations side of it, and has that not suffered somewhat because we've taken all of that and now put it on the maintenance side as well, like that. Like we budgeted 120 grand for operations, and now we said, okay, well, sorry, we're going to use that instead. But I just found that interesting that you're able to balance it up. I'm glad you did, but
Yeah.
it's just interesting that are we suffering on the operations out of it?
Through the chair. So just a little bit of background on that. Last year was the first year we were kind of wholly budgeted for dedicated positions. So we had a much tighter feel for what those costs would be, because we were getting a better sense of how many people it took to run the water treatment plant and then what we expected their allocation of time would be. What we found last year was that where we thought the higher level operators would be operations, maybe they were spending more time on the preventative maintenance program and getting to know what the plant needs in terms of that ongoing maintenance. So I would suggest there's still some learning process going on as to what's required of various processes, as well as developing and documented those maintenance processes. And that was part of what was in last year's financial plan. So I expect each year we'll see a little tweak until, maybe it's been operating for a number of years, just as we develop systems and processes and procedures within what different staff are allocated to do and what we're required. So yeah, I think that was a surprise this year, but it didn't change the total salaries and wages that were allocated to the ERWS. It was just an allocation between, but just FYI, just for kind of the operational side, so not the administrative side, we've got about 512,000 in total wages in 2024 for operating staff. So not including the admin and management side of things. So it's really trying to guess what those proportions might be between operations and maintenance. And it might change year to year, just depending on what comes up in a year and what the weather is and different projects. So we try and do our best guess on that based on work plan, and we'll bring that information back to you.
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And keeping in mind the consulting amount of $86,000 for the Stantec report, which is going to be out and ready in 2024, I'm assuming, will obviously result in probably some recommendations to do some more repairs or additions of equipment or changing over of equipment, that type of thing. So it better be heavy on the maintenance repair section than on the operating, because I anticipate that there's going to be a fair amount of recommendations as to ensuring the plant is running, at 100% efficiency. So.
Right.
Yeah, and so the Stantec, if you could confirm as well, when is that consulting report due from Stantec?
Through the chair, I don't actually know that, okay. But I think according to our utilities manager, 2020 2024 is a year of kind of evaluating the plant design and some of the other issues that have come up.
Okay.
And whether those recommendations that will come back to you include kind of capital items or minor capital items, or whether there's a need for more staff in that. I don't know what that might be. So we'll have to wait for the results of that to see whether maybe our allocation of staff isn't high enough and there's processes that should be happening that are going to need that. Or maybe it's just a design change that will allow us to maintain the same level of staffing, but perhaps there's a capital investment that's required. So I absolutely have no idea what that allocation and split might be, but I think that will certainly be brought back with the recommendations and changes to this as needed.
Great, we'll do it. We'll deal with that at that time.
Okay, I'll
Right.
add one more thing in that there are contingency amounts built into capital of 100,000 and minor capital of
Oh.
50,000. Just each year as the water treatment plant is just working through these first few years of operations, things come up. And so the board has allowed that within our financial plan to deal with any of those unexpected items. And so certainly in 2023, we were able to use that contingency item without having to come back to the board to deal with unexpected items.
Good to know. Thank you.
Thanks, Jetta. And just as maybe as a follow-up, about 3 years ago and so on, the city of Parksville adjusted the amount for administration that came into for ERWS. So I'm taking this as these numbers are based on another assessment of properly proportioning that administration costs and so on. So, and I'm assuming that's built into the 5-year projection of that you're comfortable where it sits now, that allocation?
Yes. And the work plans may tweak that each year, right? So if we have large projects in ERWS, we may need to, like we're doing this year, allocate more of that senior level time to the ERWS. But perhaps next year, 2025, perhaps we pull that back again. So we try when we're looking at the 5-year financial plans to also understand what's in the work plan to allocate that, because there also might be something in the city of Parksville, water or other utilities that require a lot of time. So we try and address that fairly based on work plan as to what that tweak is. But certainly with the ERWS, we were just seeing that it was a 10% allocation of Heidi's time just wasn't enough in 2023. And so just changing that for 2024, knowing that there's some significant projects on the work plan.
Thank you. So having that in that report, I'm assuming you were ready for the recommendations?
Well, I have a couple more slides to go through if
Okay.
you like. Okay.
Yeah, no,
So just finally on the changes from the last financial plan that was adopted, this is dealing with kind of the more project-based items. And if you recall, the board approved $120,000 for a chemical room audit. And that was really addressing, coming at it from a safety perspective, staff safety, as well as just looking at how the construction of the building is around the chemical room. The total that was approved for that was $120,000. We expect about $10,000 of it to be spent by the end of 2023. So you'll see $110,000 budgeted in 2024. The other item was, as was addressed by the manager of utilities, we had a chemical spill and leak earlier in 2023. And so you'll see that tank replacement and spill containment, which the board had approved $80,000 already with respect to looking at the design and coming up with a plan for that. And the board had deferred the other $600,000, which was the estimate related to construction at the water treatment plant, to come back to our financial planning discussions, which is why I'm raising it right now. So that total of $680,000 is those two combined as requested by the board. So $60,000 already approved, $80,000 already approved, $600,000 for discussion today. And then, as has been discussed, we're still dealing with some of the deficiencies at the water treatment plant and having Stantec support us through that. And so in 2024, there's some funds allocated, $100,000 for smaller items and $300,000 for some of the larger items to come up with design and better cost estimate reviews for the board on that. And so what we would expect is to be coming back to mid-year with some of that work in terms of Stantec's evaluation as well as other work. And that relates to water treatment plant pretreatment, the intake and pump cavitation and the transmission main flushing process. And so those monies in 2024 are really evaluation of those deficiencies. What you'll see in 2025 and beyond is a very rough estimate of what we expect might be capital costs going forward as a result of those reviews. Although we really don't know what that amount is, Stantec has given us very high level estimates, and we thought it was not appropriate to have zero in there, but to put an amount in there that is a rough guess at this point so that the board is aware of those costs that are likely to come, although we don't know what that is yet. But then to also assume, as I believe our manager of utilities said in the September meeting, is to look for grant opportunities related to those capital pieces. So you'll see that reflected in two areas in the financial plan. The first being in this cost estimate in capital. So you'll see 3.25 million in each of 2025 to 2028. But then you'll see an assumption of 50% grants on the revenue side. And again, we haven't determined what that grant might be. We know that there's a lot of grants available, especially for water at the federal and provincial levels. So again, as we further define the works that are required, we'll be able to fine tune how we look at various grants that might be available. You may recall that for the original construction of the water treatment plant, a lot of the grant funding was at 73.3%. So I don't know whether we would be fortunate enough to get some other grant funding at that level. What I've tried to do is just put kind of order of magnitude type numbers in here so that it's at least in the financial plan, even if we don't know what those amounts are. I think that that's better than having zero and having an expectation that there isn't any capital requirements. We know that there will be significant capital items, whether that's 2 million or whether it's 4 million. I don't know. We're trying to put in a really rough best estimate at this point. I have discussed that with Marie at the RDN in terms of approach of how we've come to the board with those amounts. Fortunately, those are a year out. And so what we're hoping is that in 2024, as a result of this investigative work with Stantec and others, we'll be going to RFP on some of them, is that we'll have more information for you to inform what those numbers might be going out in the 4 years, 2025 to 2028. Does anyone have any questions or comments on that before I go further on that?
Joel, you're okay? In essence, then, what we are looking at, exclusive of grants, we're looking at your best estimate at this time, based on the reports, of 3.25 million each year in capital with respect, and that's to address deficiencies, if that's the best word for them, relative to the design and what we have there to deal with.
Right. And like I say, those are really rough. We were dealing with really rough numbers from Stantec that included a couple levels of contingency. So what we actually did was take 75% of those numbers and put that in the financial plan in the hopes that as we look at all these pieces together, there will be some efficiencies from Stantec's involvement on the plant design. Some of the other projects, right? The plant design audit and the chemical room audit might deal with some of those issues as well. So like I say, really just trying to put an order of magnitude number in here for the board's consideration so that it's at least on the radar in the financial plan.
Okay. And with respect to that, following up on it, these numbers included in this financial plan. So this is not identifying any borrowing needs that we would have to have with respect to ERWS.
That's correct. I didn't consider borrowing within this financial plan, but certainly that could be an option and was used in the original construction. So that's a different discussion again. And of course, that would be a recommendation to each of the partners. For example, the city of Parksville could borrow and the regional district didn't borrow, right? Like each could make their decision on how they fund their share of those capital costs. And so that'll be a more fulsome discussion once we understand what those respective shares are and what each of the local governments would prefer to do in terms of funding that.
Thank you. And I think you mentioned earlier that you're looking at the numbers you've used in here based around the 71%, I think, for Parksville. Not the 26-74 split, but about 71 for Parksville and 29 for.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, moving
Okay.
forward.
Great. So this slide summarizes for you then what the amounts are that are in the 5-year financial plan, as well as showing the 2023 financial plan comparative and a forecasted amount for 2023 based on year-to-date figures. And so what we've got in there is you'll see some increases. You'll see the capital amounts that we just discussed being in there as well. We've gone through the changes in each of the administration, operations, maintenance, and minor capital, and understanding that where we've got forecasts below what the financial plan was is some of those items that have been rebudgeted to move into the next year. For example, the resiliency plan 125 wasn't dealt with in 2023, is rebudgeted in 2024. Which then you'll see in minor capital specifically, you see that drop down in 2025, where we hopefully are completing those projects in 2024. Just further to my comment earlier about using some of the contingency funds that the board approved in last year's financial plan with respect to some of the work that was required to that chemical spill that was funded out of that contingency amount. And so we'll have that dealt with within the capital project in 2024 in terms of design and construction related to that. On the joint venture contribution sheet, then you'll see that assumption of 50% of the grants. So that's only showing in 2025. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. So, sorry, I was busy reading here and you flipped to the next page.
Oh,
Yeah,
no worries.
if I can go back to on page 6. I noticed under the get my lines right here. On the minor capital for the expenditures end of it for 2023, the financial plan was 175. Then it does a major, and maybe you explained this, but I was busy trying to read this. Was 175,000, and then 2024 does a considerable jump to 432,000, and then back down for the rest of the projection for the next 4 years is back down to 150. If you could explain why the large jump allocation for 2024, please. Under the minor capital expenditure.
So the minor capital for 2024 includes the 125 water resiliency. It includes a membrane assessment of $30,000, which was in last year's financial plan already. There's some network switching of 17,500 that was in last year's financial plan in 2024. And then there's the balance of the chemical room audit, which was approved by council at 120, and we've got 110,000 in the 2024 minor capital. Ongoing then is the $50,000 minor capital contingency that's included in every year that was approved by the board last year,
right,
as well as that 100,000 of the minor deficiency solutions.
Okay.
Yeah.
There it is. Okay. I'm running the math as you're doing it.
Yeah,
That
great.
100,000 is where I was missing.
Perfect.
Okay, so that's what
Okay.
that is. Okay.
Yeah. And so we've got the 100,000 of deficiency solutions in minor capital, and then those larger amounts are expected to be the significant capital deficiency solutions are shown in capital.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Jared. Joel, any questions? Looking back on page 6 or page 7.
I guess perhaps related through the chair to the mayor's question, there's also a corresponding increase in the maintenance budget for 2024 that seems a fair bit higher as well. Is that related to those other items?
Through the chair, I'll just pull that up one moment. So relative to 2023, we had $100,000 in the preventative maintenance program, and that continues into 2024. there was that amount budgeted in both years. And so we didn't spend quite that amount in 2023. And so you'll see a bump there, as well as the critical spare parts accumulation. The board last year approved 35,000 in both years. And again, just bumping that up again in 2024. And then we see it drop down in 2025. So 2024 is just a little bit higher on that front, as well as just that bump in the maintenance wages going forward with trying to retweak between operations and maintenance. So that would account for the bump in 2024 relative to both 2023 financial plan as well as actuals.
Yeah, thanks, Shetta.
Okay. So looking at the joint venture contributions, then we've got an assumption of grants, which again is a rough number, but trying to reflect what we would hope might be some additional financing for any changes that come forward. And then the requisitions of each of the city of Parksville and the regional district of Nanaimo. Just as a reminder that, yeah, there's that cost sharing of the 7169, typically 7426. So depending on what the agreement says with respect to the funding of flows versus the base rate of sharing is included. And just a reminder that when we do the year-end financial statements, we actually do use the actual costs, not the allocation that was in the financial plan, just to be sure that each of the joint ventures is getting charged appropriately based on actual flows and not our estimates. So at this point, it's just an estimate.
And if I might ask, with respect to the grants and your estimate in there for grants, you're really taking a look out another couple of years and saying, okay, depending on what the flavor of the month is and where the political scene sits, of some estimate of being some grants available from either provincial or federal.
Right. That's our hope. And certainly the trend that we're seeing in grant availability is a lot of it is related to climate mitigation. It's related to drinking water. So these are both things that make me feel like there's a good likelihood of having some grant funding related to this, whether it's at that 73% that we were fortunate to have before, whether it's 40%, I don't know. So we're just trying to, again, put a rough number here. It may be that some of it needs to be debt financed if need be, right? So I think it depends on what we hear this year from each of these investigative reports and how each of the joint ventures wants to approach that, as well as how the board together wants to approach it. So those are to be determined.
So I guess as a result of that, if we take a look at, and I'm looking at 2025 and beyond, if we take the assumed grants out of there, let's assume we weren't going to get any, then we would be jumping from 2023 forecast of 1.8 million, 2023 financial plan of 2.3, then we would be jumping up to over 7 million by the time we got to 2025 and beyond.
Right. So there's significant numbers, and I think will require, significant discussions depending on what the findings are and how that's funded and how each municipality wants to move forward on that basis. And at this point, I'm trying to indicate there's likely going to be something there without really having an understanding at this point of what those amounts might be, but wanting to make sure that each of the respective local governments has it on their radar as a possibility so that these thoughts can get started in terms of how it will be funded. We'll continue to be looking at that as we're moving through all of this so that if something does come along, we can kind of have it on our radar as well, waiting for the results of all of these investigative works on your behalf.
Thank you. Mayor O'Brien.
Thank you, Chair. And as the Chair alluded to, and I think the timing is really good at this time, recognizing the pressure that we're receiving with all the recent announcements from the provincial government in particular for the increased density and the housing expectations that they're asking for each municipality to take part of. I would think it would be being proactive that we're ready to apply for these grants, because those grants are going to have to be announced pretty soon if they're going to get buy-in from the municipalities for this infrastructure. So we have to get our house in order to make sure that we have our treatment plant working to optimum efficiency with the increased density that they're proposing. And they advise that they will be supplying infrastructure monies anyways to be put toward this. And so I would think if we're ready to apply right out of the gate, I think that would be appropriate if we watch carefully any grant opportunities. But I'm recognizing now that the expectations are huge of what each municipality is supposed to be picking up. And so we have to be ready. If they're offering money, we have to be ready to get that grant, because I know it's going to get eaten up really quick. So I appreciate you're looking forward to this anyways, with your projections are high, and it's good to do that, because those grants are also going to have to be high to fund this, so that we can supply the infrastructure needs of this growing population that we're going to be expected to have. So yeah, thanks for erring on the side of over what perhaps might be needed. So I appreciate that.
Through the chair, I'll just add further comment that the water resiliency study also may bring things forward that require capital investment. We of course haven't considered that at this stage, but I think we've got a lot of good work coming up over the next 6 months that's going to inform a lot of these decisions, including possible grant applications and having that ready. And I know that that's completely on Heidi's radar, and having the support of Stantec and our other technical engineer to kind of support those processes also addresses that capacity to move these things along. And so I hope we'll be bringing that back to the board with some refinement of these numbers, because right now they're a little bit just order magnitude for you.
Through the chair, through the chair again. So I'd just like to say right now to describe my appreciation to the staff for being actually ahead of the game before this anticipated announcements that have been the flurry in this last month, because they already have the water resilience and the comprehensive water study is already ready to go to RFPs and so forth. So we're ahead of the game in anticipation of this, and it's just been very proactive. So appreciation to the staff for looking forward to protecting the needs of City of Parksville and obviously Area E as well. So I'm thank you for being proactive.
Thank you. I'll pass that along. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay, that's the end of my presentation. If you wish, on your agenda, page 1 is the 3 recommendations related to the financial plan.
Yeah. So there are 3 recommendations there. Would any of the council like to make? Now, can we take these all 3 together, or do we have to take them separately?
I think you could take them all together.
Yep. So there are 3 moved by Mayor O'Brien, seconded by Councillor Grenz. So that is recommendations. The report from the Water Service Management Committee be received, that the Englishman River Water Service Management Board approve the financial plan of 2024 to 2028. And the Englishman River Water Service Management Board recommends joint ventures adopt their respective portions of the ERWS 2024 to 2028 financial plan attached to Schedule B, City of Parksville, and Schedule C, Regional District of Nanaimo. So any further questions or comments before we take the vote? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Unopposed, that's carried. So thanks very much, Jetta.
Thank you.
So, and good reports and good recommendations. So thank you. And echoing Mayor O'Brien's comments, thanks for staff for these reports and for the efforts to balance things out within the ERWS from an operational and a management perspective. So the following up on that, is there a motion to adjourn? He's moved. So Joe and Doug. Joe, so anyhow, all in favor? Motion carried. We are adjourned. So, and thanks.